Man, welcome to Seattle. It was just sprinkling a little bit when I started out. And now it's not really pouring, but it is definitely raining. And that is unfortunate. And it's not just that. They say that you're not supposed to ride the solo wheel in the rain. I'm not sure why, but basically, so here I am. I'm on the last leg of the trip. Boy, the river sure is high. All this precipitation is really ending up in the drainage. See all the moss on the trees? This is sort of a wet area. Well, I think, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this, because it's sort of a different culture, but today is what they call, tonight is what they call the hour without power. And it's sort of made by a bunch of people who are like thinking that global warming is caused by carbon dioxide and stuff like that, and I am certainly not on board with that. Otherwise, why would the climatologists have to fake their data like this? And so basically, the plan is at 8:30 tonight, everybody's going to be, well, who participates is going to be shutting off their power, and from 8:30 to 9:30. Now, they are all into protesting because, you know, pollution and CO2 and all that stuff, and global warming. But me, I'm not on board with that. But I do like the idea of going without power, because that way we can test our preps. Morning. Everybody sure does look at you when you're riding this thing. So basically, I'm going to participate in the hour of power, not because of global warming, but because of in the future we are absolutely going to have times when we are without electricity. So today is a good day to pull out your oil lamps and see if they work. So that's what I'm going to do. Doo-dee-doo. See if I can handle that bump this time. Oh, boy, my feet came off the solo wheel pedals. That was disquieting. Ah, good, the rain has slowed way down. It's just a drizzle now. Let's go see what the river looks like. Yep, it's pretty wet. Thought about running into West Seattle to ride along Alki Point, but then I saw this rain and went, nah, let's not. That's one of the downsides of Washington State or Western Washington. It is very, very wet, and it doesn't get really cold. Now, when you're doing some gardening, basically that causes it to require more mulch, more nitrogen, basically, because all winter you got wet soil, which is basically saturated, and the microbes are just continuing to chew up the humus in the soil and turning it into nitrogen. And then the nitrogen is released to the atmosphere and lost. So in a lot of places, your garden will basically, the ground will freeze, right? And that stops the nitrogen loss. Morning.
Morning.
So basically but if you've got a lot of mulch, like these leaves that are falling to the ground, and that is just perfect. The interface between all of those leaves and the soil below, that's just an awesome place for anything to grow. So basically you can just dig through the leaves a little bit, plant your seeds, throw everything together, and then you've got an awesome garden right there. Might even consider guerrilla gardening a little bit. Of course, there are deer around here, so they will, if anything pops up that's edible, they'll probably chew it off. But it's worth considering. Yeah, that whole area is just awesome soil. Finally, some shelter. Not a bad little park. Oops, that's a big puddle. Have to ride slow through that. Ooh. This thing's better when it's dry.
Wow. All right. able to do that the first time, I'll bet.
That's why I'm wearing a helmet. Yep, got a little lemon ginger tea going after that lovely little 5 or 6 mile ride in the in the rain. It is wet and ugly today, and not much can be done except inside stuff. I would like to go back and cover briefly one of the things that I was talking about earlier about soil, right? In Washington State, Western Washington is a bit like a jungle or a rainforest. The problem is the soil doesn't freeze in the wintertime, usually. I mean, almost never. and basically the soil microbes keeps chewing away the soil and turning it into nitrogen gas, and that nitrogen, which could have been used to grow some plants, is lost to the atmosphere, right? So in order to overcome that, you have to put a lot more nitrogen in. Either you can break out the miracle grow, or you can get creative. You got nitrogen fixing plants like you know, beans and such. But you also can sort of take a lesson from the way plants grow in serious hot jungles in the equator, right? They don't have so many nitrogen fixing plants that build the soil that are like low down. The majority of their nitrogen fixers, if I understand correctly, are trees, right? And basically my plan is to take advantage of sort of that strategy, as well as the smaller plants as well. But basically my idea, like every month I make more progress toward the homestead, household, whatever that I want. If I don't shop actively for a house, I will save more money, you know. I mean, every month that goes by, the real estate prices drop a little bit lower, and I've got a little bit more money saved. This month alone, I've saved like probably close to $4,000, because it's a 3 paycheck month. We get paid every 2 weeks, and every couple times a year we get 3 paychecks in. Bonus. But anyway, so I've got about $46,000 saved for a down payment now. But as the real estate prices continue to drop, basically the time might come when I've got enough saved to buy the house outright. And if that was the case, that would just be awesome. Yeah, here we go. So basically my plan is to get a house, right? And I'm gonna have just, you know, probably kind of a small house, right? Anyway, not tiny, but small. But basically behind the house, as the house faces the south, right, I want to put in a bunch of those like tall, skinny, evergreen trees, basically, but they're really small. I mean, and they're really tall, and they're really skinny, and their branches don't go out very far. I can't remember what those things are called, but and they're evergreens, right? They are always green, and they'll grow probably about the size of a 2-story house, if I understand correctly. And I think a lot of places farmers use them for like barriers, wind barriers and stuff. But anyway, as the house basically is here, and that's south, but basically what'll happen is these trees, right, they'll be on the north side, and when that happens, the winter sun coming in will tend to bounce off of these trees and then end up hitting your house and going in the north facing windows, and then you basically get the southern sun, what there is of it, in the winter time, hitting your house, right? That's my plan. And then of course, if I can probably accentuate it by building a small water feature here, and then the sun will also bounce off of that water feature and hit your house, right? And then you can also grow, you know, whatever, duckweed and tilapia, or possibly if you have like a really deep area in the pond, those would be good for like predatory fish. And then shallow area here with some obstructions and whatnot in there, like cement blocks with the 2 holes in them maybe. The little fish can hide in there, and they can like eat little things like duckweed, and then your bigger fish can eat those. But I want to make sure it's got a liner and everything in it, because I don't want it to be considered a permanent water thing on the property. Otherwise the wetland police will come up and say, hey, that's a wetland, we're confiscating that. You can still live there, but if you let a fart wrong, we're going to be right here to write you a ticket. But anyway, so this will be like an obvious man-made water feature bouncing off, and then you basically get more solar gain both from the tree directly and from the water feature. Now on the on the west side, however, of my house, we're looking at it from the south, right? There you got the trees over here. Okay, now, and then of course you got a bunch of them back here. You got a whole wall of trees, and the sun comes down, bounces off these evergreen trees, hits your house, right? And you got your water feature out front, like so. Big window for your indoor greenhouse. And then the neat thing, you see, the problem is in Western Washington and a lot of places is during 3 months of the year it is friggin' hot. It like reaches 80 degrees, and a creature of the ice like me, I'm a creature of ice and darkness. I can work in graveyard shifts, and I can work in the snow, and I'm whistling and happy as can be. But when it comes to heat, I suffer, and I get lethargic and slow and tired, and it's just not my thing. But basically on the west side will be my secret weapon for the hot weather, right? You got your, basically what these are nitrogen fixing alder trees, right? And you got more of them here, and basically on the west side of the house I want alder trees, and they are a big broad-leafed tree, and every year they fix nitrogen because they are a nitrogen, they got nodules just like a legume on their roots, and they pull nitrogen out of the air and add a few minerals from the soil, and then build all that leaf mass, and then in the wintertime they drop all of their leaves. You can rake them up and dump them right on your garden. You can even, in your water feature, you could even throw the leaves down, some leaves down in there, and they will break down, and they'll provide nitrogen for the aquatic plants. But basically in the summertime they will have a giant leaf canopy, and then you can handle the early morning sun and the noon sun, but when it gets to that hot afternoon sun, it'll just bake your house. But with those broadleaf trees, that would block that western sun. And you could even, depending on how hot it gets, you could even plant a couple of them out here, and they're more south, and they might even shade your house when it reaches like noon or so, right? But then they drop all of that nitrogen that they've been producing in leaf litter. You can rake it up, throw it on your garden, and then there's no leaves here. And then in the winter time you get the full solar gain, and even when the sun swings around to the west, even if it's like through clouds, you still get some of that sun, especially like ultraviolet and whatnot. But that turns into heat. It goes right past the trees with no leaves, and you get the solar gain. So that's my homestead that I want, and that's what I'm saving for every month. I'm saving a couple $1,000s a month, and I suspect I'll have another 40,000 within maybe another 30,000 by this time next year. That'll bump me up to about 90,000 that I can put down, and then I can possibly even buy my place outright with no mortgage. That's my ideal situation. Okay, well that's just one thing I wanted to cover as I was riding my solar wheel, but I just couldn't really get all that across. You needed a whiteboard and all that. So I guess that's it. Later.